Hi everyone. Today we will talk about what variables are and what they are not. Here we have the basic definition of a variable. Variables are properties or characteristics of an event, meaning something that happens, an object, that's a thing, or a person that can take on different values or amounts and therefore vary or change within a study. Notice that our definition of variables has three parts. The first one is that variables are properties or characteristics of something. The second part is that these variables can take on different values or amounts. And the third part is that they can vary or change within a study. What does this really mean, though? It means that a variable is a property or characteristic. We'll start by looking at the first part. So, if we're looking at our speaker here, it means that this object has the property of being red. Therefore, the color of this object, that is the property of it, is the variable. That's the basic way to identify a variable. It's something that something else has. So in this case, our speaker is red. Therefore, the color is the variable. When you think of people, the most important thing to remember is that people are not variables. People cannot be variables. The people that you study in your research project are not variables. I am a person, for example, and I have the characteristic of being female. Another characteristic about me is that I like the color yellow. Those are characteristics. Much like maybe you might have the characteristic of being shy or being outgoing, or maybe you like green and not yellow. Those are all characteristics. That means that these are variables or can be variables in a study. But you are not a variable because you're a person. A person has characteristics, and therefore a person has things that we can count as variables. But that only covers the first part of our definition. We still have to consider the rest. The second part of our definition suggests that a variable can take on different values or amounts, and because of this, can vary or change within a study. So, let's go back to our math class to understand this part of the definition. In math, specifically algebra, you have symbols, letters, that represent variables in an equation. Here's a common equation that you use in mathematics. Y equals mx plus b can be substituted by numbers. Numbers are values. So these letters in your algebraic equations refer to variables, really, and these letters can take on different values, different numbers, and therefore can change. And that's one of the reasons why algebra uses equations. Let's consider that same principle now within the context of research. Remember I said that a variable is a characteristic that can vary or change. So let's look at people, because remember, people are the subjects of your study, but they are not variables. they have characteristics, and therefore those characteristics are your variables. So if you have a group of people in your study of varied gender, you probably have at least these two basic genders, male and female. Gender, therefore, is a variable. If you only had women in your study, then gender would not be a variable because it wouldn't change. Height can be a variable as well. Height can range from short to average to tall. Therefore, because the characteristic of height that a person has can change, we would say that height can be a variable in a research study. In this case, it can have at least 3 variations. This is a basic description of what variables are. We haven't gotten into the types of variables. And before I leave you with this, I must clarify one final point. Remember I said that people are not variables because variables are characteristics and people have characteristics. They are not characteristics. So if you're doing a study, what do you call the people in your study? The word to describe the people in your study, the people you are studying in research, is the sample. So if you are studying a group of 6-year-old children, then the 6-year-old children are your sample. If you are studying a group of primary school students, then the primary school students are your sample. If you are studying maybe, let's say, university level students that have a GPA of 4.0 and above or below, then your sample is the students, but the variable, the property or characteristic that changes is their GPA. That's their grades. So remember that the people you are studying are your sample. The characteristics they have are your variables, and variables are not just characteristics, but they are characteristics or properties that vary or change.